that, but I didn't organize that properly. I'm going to just introduce Phenomenal Conversations, which are crafted and curated to co-create a regenerative worldview. I'm very pleased to welcome today Karima Kadaoui. And what we'll do, hopefully, in the conversation is amplify meaning and nuance in a complex world. We'll expand imagination, and then we'll also ask some powerful questions. So one of the classic things I don't do, Karima, is read the speaker's or interviewee's biography. So I let them introduce themselves. As we have limited time, if you could sort of give people that are unfamiliar with you some background of how you came to be kind of one of the key catalysts in the Tamkeen learning process.
Thank you, Dave. I will go to the word catalyst, if you don't mind.
Yes, yeah.
Because the catalyst is immune, is not, it's distant, it's separated from whatever process is unfolding and revealing itself. Whereas here is very much fully experiencing, embodying, and reflecting. So how did that come about? Well, I guess the privilege to take time to co-reflect with friends, experiences, different experiences in life, experiences in the corporate world, working in government, working in the social world, experiences that deeply touched me. And in that deep co-reflection, to start questioning the questions that I had and the questions that we have. So I think with that questioning the questions, we realized that very much those questions were part of the problems that we were looking at, that we were reflecting. So the question was, why this, why that? Why do all these manifestations of human withering and societal disharmony are perpetuating, seem to increase when there is so much energy into finding solutions, so much energy into investing in human development, in projects, in pilots. And these whys, we started to move from the shape through what was manifested to what was more in the essence, to what was said and told by society about itself. And when we started really listening to ourselves, being part of that society, then we started realizing that our questions themselves were very much part of the question, that were manifesting a certain sense of self, an individual sense of self that was echoed then in a collective sense of self, leading us to slowly moving into what do we even understand, how do we even understand a humanity sense of self? So it's to the questioning the questions, I might add two things, Dave. I would add something, which is the gratitude. The gratitude, which is not a thank you, the gratitude, which is not a praising the universe or the whole or God, or it's this gratitude that is, with all that, is a vital pulsation of the heart. It's what allows us to widen the gaze. And that widening the gaze is only a reflection of the widening of the heart.
That's gorgeous. I love that way of describing what was happening. I'm wondering if I could prompt you, because we've sort of dived straight into Tamkeen and the learning process itself. Would you be open to just sharing a little bit of what you did before you started this process, just so people know the background that you're coming from? And then we'll dive in much more into the learning process. That's what we're here to do.
There is the did in terms of, yes, an experience as a daughter, as a mother, as a wife, as also working as a consultant for one of the consultancy, and working as an advisor to ministers, and also being deeply moved having the privilege to have met extraordinary women who lived and worked in infrahuman conditions. And in factories, actually factories that were Dutch companies here in Morocco.
Right.
Yes, yes, yes. And when I say infrahuman, I mean, you cannot imagine how those women were treated.
Right.
So, so all these different experiences and many more just came together, kind of met, confluenced, and when I really feel that it is this ability to stop and to turn back and look back, looking at the facts, but in life we grow our understanding of things.
Yeah.
So whenever you turn back, your very understanding of that historicity is different. You create new connections. So this is very much what I have been doing. But I will quote my mother, who would always tell me, when you see a heap of garbage and there's one flower growing there, look at the flower.
Gorgeous. Yeah. I think there's a metaphor for today's world, or the news that we're seeing, at least perceiving. So you mentioned about questioning the questions and this co-reflection. Could you describe in a bit more detail how that works and how you work in different ecosystems of learning and education? I think primarily has been your background or effort to put this out, but I know it spreads wider. But would you prepare to share a bit more detail about the Tamkeen learning process and how it works and how it affects your circumstances that people are in?
There is something maybe in a certain way still puzzles me, or at least initially puzzled me. When different communities or even institutions would come to Tamkeen with a question.
Yeah.
So our process started with our partners, with our co-founding members, with our team, meeting a neighborhood community, and then meeting the implicit questions that were there. Very quickly, we had, like, for instance, the university with the teacher training, who came with the question saying, well, we train these teachers. They are sent to different communities, in villages, in mountainous areas. They're not their communities, and not sometimes the areas, the language is not even Arabic, it's Amazigh. So so all this effort and investment and into having a teacher in the community, or several teachers in the community, when the teachers are rejected, or the teachers reject themselves, it creates dramatic stories, terrible stories. And so they asked us, could you train? Could you contribute to the training of teachers?
Yes.
Or how they can connect to these communities. And what started very much extracurriculum initially became part of the curriculum of the teacher training. And one of the beautiful things I heard actually from those students, future teachers, was you woke up the child that had died in us.
Oh, beautiful.
And we promise you, wherever we go, we will never let the child in our students die.
Oh, beautiful.
So we did not come with a curriculum. We came with there's a question. Let's co-reflect it. Let's grow a shared understanding. Let's live the question. Let's play with the question. And by doing that, we were connecting with one another. We were co-creating the conditions to experience what we call the Makan Makeen, that safe, love nurturing and love nurtured place, where we liberate our imagination and our creativity, where everyone has his place, where we go from surprise to surprise, and delight at the language that grows, and that seeks to express an experience that is deeply, deeply human.
I mean, just your example of what happened in the shift with training the teachers and the teachers with the children, there seems to be something essential and elemental in that recognition of growing people first in a way, or growing their its essence first. That seems to be key to what I'm hearing anyway, seems to be key to what you're unleashing.
It's recognizing.
Recognizing, okay.
Yes. And it's very much in that recognizing that also realizing. And
And
realizing in the
realizing,
both meanings of realizing. I realize, I recognize, and I realize it becomes real. And I think
yes,
this is it's realizing the beauty.
right,
Realizing the beauty of that moment where we all come together,
yes,
reflecting our questions, meeting each other in our shared humanity. I recognize my humanity and your humanity. I realize the beauty
yes,
and I realize it. It's this is very much the experience of the students that I experience with our students, with us. And when I meet them right now in the education system in different areas, different provinces, I always meet their beautiful stories of recognizing and realizing the beauty.
that's I really resonate with that, and I find that incredibly interesting. And I noticed, you found catalyst not an inadequate expression for me describing your work, and now you've making these distinction between realizing and recognizing. And I've heard one of your podcasts where you talk about the logo poetic. So what is that? What's essential about this understanding and use of words that kind of seems to be central to this way of working? I mean, of course, you're probably doing this in Arabic, not in English, but anyway, that's quite a command of English to be able to explain that. So,
It actually is in at least English and Arabic and French.
right. Okay. All three.
Because it allows us sometimes Spanish with Louis in German because it's really reflecting our experiences in different languages.
Yes.
Allows us to prehend those experiences in different ways and to look for the words, to look for to reflect the etymology of words. Our languages behold an extraordinary wisdom. All languages. I mean, there's 7,100 languages in the world right now. Languages,
Yeah.
not dialects, languages.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's an extraordinary wisdom of people in different places in different times having prehended, having grasped an understanding of reality and embedding it and crystallizing it in a language and in a grammar. And so a language behold our cosmologies. So it's very beautiful to move, to go, to reflect in different languages. And essentially, Tamkeen here, we are, is very much between English and in Arabic. I think we've all experienced moments where we said, I'm speechless. I have no words to express. The idea is how do you stay there? How do you stay there and start looking for the words that are able to resemble the experience? So when you experience deeply human experiences, deep connections, those are the moments when reflecting those experiences that we all come together, listening to each other's stories, reflecting the language. Language limits our thoughts.
Yeah.
I cannot thought what my language cannot express. But
Yeah.
the moment I start reflecting that language, it liberates you.
Yeah.
And then you are able to think the unthought of. And when you start thinking the unthought of, then at that moment, you are able to grow in understanding because that widening of the heart is able to express it in terms of words and in terms of understanding. So logopoesis, as you were saying,
Yes.
which we say, I would say, is in itself the language of Tamkeen. Is the language, this co-reflection of a language, is experienced with all our partners. It might be
Yes.
with the Ministry of Education, in a school, at university and faculties, in villages, and the language as we move on in this process, what we're realizing is that becomes more and more poetic. There's a melody in that language. We're looking for the language, but the language that liberates and frees itself from what is expressed in an everyday routine, which though the experience, Tamkeen experience, is extraordinarily mundane, is in the small things.
Yeah.
As soon as you look for that language, and it sounds so beautiful and poetic, then that's very mundane, that very simple, draws wonder, feeds wonder.
Beautiful.
And then that moment of wonder is when you connect. You connect a deep connection to the self and to the other. That means you connect to the self that is greater to the self. And that was we called humanity, connecting to the self that is greater than the self.
Well, I love this notion of freeing thought, or perceiving through the limitations of thought, and perceiving the unthinkable, you might say, or at least expanding one's heart to perceive the unthinkable, because I think there's a kind of metaphor there for the times we're in. But I'm curious because, I mean, one of the reasons I'm interviewing you is because you've got this such beautiful poetic language of describing learning and describing the experience of Tamkeen, and you transmit this extraordinary beauty and faith. And I'm kind of interested in your faith in humanity, given humanity seems to be up against the wall or struggling mostly. I mean, many, America is like really, really polarized. Many countries are, the state of the world and the division and polarization. And that seems to be an expression of humanity that isn't helpful to us, or hasn't been helpful. So how do you distinguish between this core essence of humanness or humanity and these kind of dysfunctional end of civilization behaviors and destructiveness that's prevalent on the planet?
Isn't it the most extraordinary paradox?
Yes.
Trusting our humanity in a crisis of humanity.
Yeah.
I will share a story, and then I'll share what I heard this morning.
Please.
This is a story I often share, and since we have friends here who haven't met Tamkeen before and met me, and I'm so glad that you're here today, I'll share it again. And please bear with me, my friends who have heard it several times. But it's a story, every time I share it, it just is something that further widens in the heart. This deep rahma, which is compassion. This young man in a community, they lived a lot of violence in the community. And they were reflecting an experience of violence with the youth. And he was telling me, I was in the cafe and we were talking about this violence. And then we said, but why are we talking about it like this? We were expecting violence every day. And then we stopped and we said, we haven't had violence for almost 2 years. What happened? The houses are the same. The streets are the same. The people are the same. Nothing has changed and everything has changed. So we're realizing that all the community initiatives that we have co-created brought us together. Before violence used to bring us together. Today, love brings us together. And we realized that all those community initiatives were only but a reason to remain together. A couple of years later, after he's saying that, I was sitting with a very prominent sociologist here in Morocco. And he told this young man, so you're telling me that before Tamkeen there was violence and now there's love? He says, no. Before there was love, and today there is love. But before we did not express love with love.
Gorgeous.
This is an expression of rahma, compassion. But this is an expression also of an extraordinary sense of self that I can only describe today as a sense of self resting in love. And I remember I thanked my friend, my dear friend Louis, because we were having all these conversations and all these stories. And he told me, this is a sense of self, resting in love. Why do I tell you this story? This morning, I heard Gabor Mate, and he was saying every day, our eyes are seeing abomination, the killing of children, the burning, the crushing, the dismembering, every day. And what our eyes are seeing, our heart cannot help but to feel.
Hmm.
And when our heart feels, then our heart is broken. Because we cannot see what we're seeing every day. And every day our heart is broken in the helplessness. But then he adds, and that is a tribute to our humanity. We are able to feel, we are able to see. And the fact that our hearts are breaking is speaking our shared humanity. At the same time as we're seeing extraordinary expressions of dehumanization, to the point where human beings are holding up their children and telling us, please see my dead child as a human being, begging us. At the same time, we are experiencing and witnessing extraordinary expressions of our humanity. Doctors literally dying, not only from Palestine, doctors who come from other countries, people who come from other countries to try to save these children.
Yeah.
So those extraordinary expressions of humanity, this is what we need to see and recognize. In order not to fall in despair, but to continue to see the beauty that we behold, the mere fact that we're able to feel, not only to feel for that dead child, but to feel for the one who has killed that child, dehumanizing that child, by doing so, dehumanizing himself or herself. Distinguish between what is done to the human being and never stop seeing a human being as a human being.
That's extraordinarily well put and a beautiful example. And the image came back to me of your mother and the flower on the garbage heap. The lesson of appreciating the beauty is practice appreciating the beauty seems to be an important learning point in these times. And you've described a lot of different situations in Tangiers, Morocco, and to my mind and others with sort of different preconceptions about Africa, North Africa, in a way, what is it about the conditions there that make it so ripe? Because there's a lot less privilege, like you were describing the women in the factories, the violence, the difficulties. So what is it that makes those circumstances maybe more ripe for systemic change than us well-off, insulated, privileged people in Northern Europe, for example?
Oh, maybe 40 million human beings. All sharing humanity.
Yeah.
And the ability to come together and to and it's not that, and this is the thing, I think Tamkeen is a word that speaks a movement first, a moving. I will go a bit to the word, just to go back.
Please describe for people that are
Yes.
unfamiliar. I think they'd love to hear it.
The meaning of Tamkeen, and then we go back to the meaning the same way we were talking about the meaning of our names.
Yeah, yeah.
Every word in Arabic has a root verb, a three-letter root verb. If you want to understand, if you want to explore the meaning of a word, you go to the root.
Yeah.
It itself is poetic. You go to the root, and then the root is defined as being the root as Tamkeen. So it takes us back. So the meaning is a gesture. It's a moving. It's a coming back. And then when you look at all the other words that are suffused with the same root, you hear the word mumkeen, possible. You hear the word possibility, imkania. You hear mumkeen, imkania, but you also hear Makan Makeen. Makan is the place time. And Makeen is safe, love nurtured, love nurturing. Actually, the Makan Makeen is also how we speak the womb of the mother.
Oh, right.
The mother is being the Makan Makeen, so it's the womb. That love nurturing, a love nurtured place. In that womb where blooms life, where blooms love, that life and that love transforms the very mother that gave birth to that baby, to that life and to that love. That is Tamkeen, an extraordinary understanding of transformation. Transformation that is suffused with essence, that is suffused with love, that is an expression in itself of humanity. So Tamkeen is a semantic field, a resonant semantic field. Maybe our language, Arabic, indeed does facilitate thinking transformation. I don't think transformation by saying I start here and I arrive here and I measure here and I measure here and then I know that I've transformed or whatever we were seeking to transform.
Yes, yeah.
It's the language, the grammar, the very grammar of the language. The fact that we can't conjugate in the future. That to speak the future, I have to add a letter to the verb in the present. And that letter is the letter S, the letter of salam, the letter of peace, the letter of shalom.
Mm-hmm.
So to speak the future, I add the letter of peace and of shalom to the verb in the present, and I bring that present, that verb, that future into the present.
Yeah.
So I'm able to think and to speak an experience of transformation. But since we think and we reflect the process in English, in French, and in Arabic, we realize that we are all able to reflect that because we are all humanity, one humanity. So the conditions maybe were that we took the time.
You took the time. Yeah.
When we don't take the time. And maybe that is wisdom. At the time of emergency, of urgency, is to take the time, to befriend time in a different way, to take the time to sit in a circle and to co-reflect in a way where every feeling feels that it has its place and every thought feels that it has its place and every imagination of future possibles becomes the place. That future in the present.
It's very, very moving to hear how you're articulating that and that possibility, but as a co-creation between all members. And given that you're working in North Africa, you must run up against structures, institutions, ways of operating and power structures that are kind of resistant or maybe not open. How does this this very democratic, if you want to use that word, but this very inclusive co-creative process where everyone has a contribution that's valued to make, how does that encounter the kind of rigidity that's present? I mean, there's rigidity everywhere, and I'm sure there's also rigidities in Morocco. And how does that encounter unfold, as it were?
When you feel resistance,
Yeah,
and rigidity is usually your own resistance you feel.
Yeah.
So let's start there and reflect there. When you
Okay.
ask water, do you feel resistance? The water will say, what resistance? The water finds its way.
Yeah.
It's a flow. It's actually an experience of a flow field. So when our partners from the education system, at the level of the governance of the education systems, come with their questions,
Yeah.
this is where we start. We co-reflect the question.
Okay.
We co-reflect the question, we live the question, we play with the question. And slowly, I am no longer sitting there as the equivalent of the minister at the level of the region, or the equivalent of the minister at the level of the province, and with all the authorities that are present. It comes to a point that we are all there, human beings, co-reflecting, growing a shared understanding. And it's in that shared understanding that we experience that extraordinary metamorphic transformation, a transformation that emanates from the immanent potential. In Arabic, tahawul istimkani. Istimkani has the same root as Tamkeen.
Right.
Again, we are back to the semantic field that expresses this process. So I can give you examples of moments that you can say, oh, there's resistance. And this is when you go back to the gratitude. The mere fact that everybody came, that we are sitting around together in a circle, the mere fact that we are all here to express, to recognize, and to express that gratitude. And then everything that is shared, and even if some will get afraid, this is resistance, this is opposing, this is absolutely not. It's just really actually experiencing every thought is important, and every thought has its place. Because we all come with our understanding. And it's a little bit like, to speak in a metaphoric way, it's a little bit like you have the light and you have the lamp. That understanding shines through that light, through the lamp. And it takes different shapes. And then I say, Dave, your understanding is not my understanding. But can we recognize the light? Can we start there? To recognize the beauty of the light. And it might have taken different shapes. And then all those lights of understanding, when they're able to recognize each other, then suddenly we open up a new field, a twilight so fecund with possibility, with new future possibles. And it's a twilight that is dawning.
That is good. I think we're coming to a close, but one of the things I invited you, and I've boldly titled this Foregrounding the Beloved Community, but there's something in your expression, but your expression that includes everybody and everything, to me seems to be a fractal of what might become the beloved community. Am I over egging it? Am I being too bold? Or there's the flavors that are permeating through this gorgeous process, and the way that you describe people meeting through beauty, through truth, and through common humanity, to me seems to be an extraordinary potential that still could be realized even in current circumstances. So what would your reflection be on my projection, maybe, about the beloved community?
Thank you for your mirror, Dave. Such a beautiful reflection. So beautiful. I was, a few months ago, I was at the university in another province, and a student comes and tells me, can you please come to our village? And I knew that student. We had experienced him keen in those faculties of that university. And he says, we're coming together, my friends from university, the ones who come from the city and the ones in the village, and we're all going to meet in my village. Because what we experience here in our university, in our faculty, we want to experience it in our neighborhoods and in our villages.
Beautiful.
So I went.
Yeah.
And it was a celebration. The whole village was there. They brought tents. The youth contacted the city, the village council. So they supported the event. They loved the idea. And they called it مخيل مشترك, co-imagination, co-imagining.
Co-imagination.
Let's imagining together. It's probably a better translation. Imagining together. And these are villages that have inherited conflicts, that were not connected, but then you had these young people from other villages coming to the village. And I remember this elderly man, and he sat next to me. He was far away from me, and then slowly came close, and he sat next to me. And at one point, he tells me, you know, Karima, I will never forget this day. And he says, and our children will never forget this day. And the children of our children will never forget this day. And as he was saying this, he was pointing the finger to the mothers and the fathers who came, who were under the tent to co-reflect what can we imagine, what new possibilities and possibles in our village. He pointed to the other tent, huge tents, where the children were there and the youth were co-facilitating these workshops. And he pointed at the youth that came from the city, that came from the other villages. I looked at him and I knew what he meant. There was something there. If you looked at what was actually happening, you say, yes, it's nice, it's beautiful. But there was something much deeper happening there. You know how that village calls itself today? The village of humanity.
The village of humanity. Wow. Great.
It has become a village that became a mirror to so many other villages around. They said, we have completely transformed. It goes beyond. Actually, he told me we transcended transformation.
Beautiful. So I think that, go on, please finish, please finish.
So going back to the beloved.
Yes, please.
This is when the beloved and the love become one.
Oh, good. Beautiful.
This is when the beloved, the love, and the lover become one. This is when we meet Dave and Caroline and Nicole and Fabien and Alan and Gina and Merritt, Cullen and Silvana and Louis, Alessandra and Barbara and Nadia. This is when we meet and we're able to look at each other in each other's eyes, and then we meet ourselves in each other's humanity.
That is such a perfect line to end the recording on. So I'm going to thank you so much for sharing so deeply and richly from the center of your soul. I really, really appreciate and love it. So I'm going to end the recording and then I'm going to ask you a question.
I thought you've been doing that